Good evening, and welcome to our session on reviewing the retirement notion. I'm Kapish Singh from the Professional Provident Society, and I'll be your host for this evening. We are here to answer any questions that you may have and ask that you please refrain from using the raised hand function, but rather type your comments and questions in the Q&A tab. We will respond to the questions once we have concluded the presentation. CPD certificates will be loaded on the SADA platform, and you will be able to access your certificates under your member profile. If you are not a SADA member, you will be able to create a profile for yourself and access your CPD certificates. The event for tonight qualifies for one ethical point. We are streaming live on YouTube also, just in case you have difficulty accessing the Zoom platform. I would like to remind and notify you of an upcoming webinar. On the 5th of November, we will have the SADA and the Greatest Awakening series part 8 on craniofacial pain, TMD and BDS with Dr. Stephen Olmos. Once again, SADA and PPS are committed to empowering our members through education. We would like to thank those of you that have attended the previous PPS financial planning presentations. You will definitely pick up that there are areas covered in tonight's session that tie in with the previous session on estates and wills. And I urge you to look out for the upcoming sessions as well. Should you wish to be contacted by PPS, kindly note that we will be sharing a link in the chat, and we will also share details at the end of the presentation. But you are also more than welcome to drop us a note with your contact details in the Q&A tab. I would like to now introduce our speaker for this evening. Patrick Mhlari is crazy about numbers and people and sees himself as fortunate to work with people who range from all walks of life, from the youngest professionals starting out all the way to retiring professionals. From that, he is well equipped to add value to your financial journey. Patrick's primary function is to help his clients assess their financial position to ensure that their planning is in line with their dreams and ambitions. Patrick is driven to make a difference in people's lives by adding value to their portfolios to ensure that they retire in a healthier financial position and that their short and medium-term goals are catered for financially. On that note, Patrick, over to you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Kapish, for such a wonderful introduction. I couldn't have wished for a better way to be introduced. Thank you, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, when I received the invite to be part of today's webinar, I was excited. Just thinking of the prospects, you know. The sole reason is that I am crazy. I've got mad respect and crazy about the work that you do. You know, it takes a special somebody to do what you do and sometimes make it so profitable. You know, chats with some members that are part of DPA reveal things like that. You know, and then the other thing, if it wasn't for the founding dentists that started PPS, as most of you would know, wouldn't be here, you know. So believe me, we hold dentists and other professionals in high regard, you know. Today, as Kapi said, I'll be talking to you about the notion of retirement, some of the concepts you might know, and that's okay if I'm just here to remind you of the important stuff. I would have done my job, you know. And then in my professional space, I wear many hats, but the one that I wear the most is the one of leading a high performance team of advisors, you know. And every day we go through a real case studies, you know. I hope some of the lessons we learn from them will be of help to you, you know. So, but for today, I'm gonna wear a cap of piloting you through this journey of retirement planning, you know. So if anything, yes, I know you'll get your CPD point, but over that, I hope I add value into this conversation, you know. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's start, let's kick off. Okay. Alrighty. So the topic I will be going through today is that one of reviewing the retirement notion. And then just to kick off and have some fun and get my analytical people in the room to be one with me, here's some interesting stats that I'd like to share with you. It is a worrying picture, but please indulge me. Consider this. Out of every 100 South Africans who work at the age of 65, 49 will be dependent on the state or family, 29 will be deceased, 12 will be bankrupt, 5 will still be working, 4 will be able to retire comfortably, and 1 will be wealthy. It's pictures, it's stats like this that keep me up most nights and that make me wake up every morning to try to solve that, you know. It would be nice if we can change that picture. Okay. And then when we speak about retirement, on a day-to-day, we realize that the biggest cost that's faced by a retiree is usually healthcare or costs associated with healthcare. Just to give you some stats compiled by Alexander Forbes, to give it some objectivity, you'd find that you'd need 1.6 million comprehensive health insurance, 900,000 for intermediate, and 650,000 to be basic, you know? So it's a huge chunk that you need to be prepared for. Okay, and then obviously when we're talking about retirement, we go through the lifestyles that we all go through as working professionals. And then we start off in the dependent phase, learning, and then obviously with a view to end. And then we go into interdependent. And then in that space, we end. And hopefully we live below our income and save the rest, you know. As easy as that formula sounds, you'll be surprised, you know. And then obviously when you are in retirement now, this is the time to live on whatever you saved, you know. And then we'll call this in or the dependent state or phase, whereby now you are, whatever you've saved needs to carry you through. Oh, some more interesting stats for you, ladies and gentlemen. Now I'm just wanna drill down the number of paid days remaining, you know. I'm not here to depress you, I promise. This is just insight I wanna share with you. So if you are 25 years old, like the subjects of our case study later on, you'll realize that you've got 420 paid days remaining, you know. And then at 35, it reduces to 300 paid days that are remaining, you know. And then at 45, we've got 180 paid days remaining, you know. And then the closer we are now to retirement, and for example, at 55, you'll have 60 paid days remaining, you know. So what do I say to you on this? I'm saying use every paid day wisely, you know, especially for retirement savings. Oh, so on this point now, I just want you to pause and think for a minute, you know. I'd like to encourage you to think about important stuff, you know. As I said, one of the biggest component that people spend most of their money on at retirement is health costs, you know. If you've got a good health, medical aid or insurance plan, then you're good to go, you know. But then there are times that you have to pay co-payments in that, you know. So I hope while you're saving for retirement, those that are not there yet, you'll be taking great care to make sure that you've saved for that. Okay, so again, when you look at retirement, it's not just about the money that we make, you know, it's a whole chapter, it's a whole new chapter. So I'm being told about some of the clients that have retired, you know, and these questions hold true even in those circumstances, you know. So let's examine them a bit, you know. In terms of work, do you still want to work when you're in retirement, you know? I'll be honest, we've got members or clients that are above the retirement age or in retirement, the orthodox retirement age, that are still working, you know. I say it's passion, you know. They do it for passion, they can't do anything else, you know. So they've spent their whole life doing that, you know. Do you need to earn extra money when you are in retirement? Would you be self-employed, or do you remain being self-employed, or if you're in public practice, Are you planning to be self-employed once you retire? Are you willing to do voluntary work just to keep the mind busy? And then what are your main interests, So those are the questions we encourage you to think about when it comes to work and hobbies. And then I'll move over to your health, you know yourself much better than I would know, or anybody on this call would know. Of course, I'm not talking to those that are sitting with their spouses. Those two would know. But in terms of your health, what is your present health state? How is your nutrition and diet? Your fitness and exercise regime. Your future private health care, have you thought about that? And then regular checkups as well. These are the cost items that at retirement you'll be looking into, And then to do for fun, so the clever people at work came up with the 3 points to say you'd go on holidays, you'd do weekends away, you do overseas travel, But the remaining 2 blocks, I want you to fill in terms of fun, what is it that excites you? What is it that you plan on doing? Even that activity, most of them would have a cost. So think about that when you're planning for retirement. And then when you look at one of the most critical ones, your housing and your community. Where would you stay? Is it in a retirement village? Is it at home or with family? As you know, it's not everybody, but some people. When they go older, they do need support of other people, So it's always a wise idea to live in a community, of some sort, whatever resonates with you, And then your involvement in community and family. How is it? Am I one of those that are waiting for retirement to start doing that? And again, I leave those 3 other blocks for you to complete, what is it that you'll do under that block? And then your finance, managing your money. Who does that currently? Is it you? Is it outsourced? Do you understand the inflows and the outflows of it? Do you know which trajectory it's taking as you go towards retirement, or as your payday decreases, number of paydays left decrease, sorry. So, and then do you budget your income and expenditure? As I said earlier, as I alluded to this earlier, the golden rule, make sure your expenditure is less than your income, so less that you've got even more to save, golden rule. And then your investments, some of you, I'm well aware, are on that journey, have already started with their investments towards retirement, Are they on track? Have you checked the performance lately? Are you invested in the right assets, in the right funds, that type of thing, Capital and savings, do you have enough? Do you have enough to carry you through into retirement and beyond, And then obviously the question that we deal with the most is the question of how much do you need? How much does one need to retire comfortably, I wish there was a blanket rule to say use this formula and whatever the answer, compute the variables and whatever the answer you get is the formula, Unfortunately, it isn't. It's individual specific, So I urge you then to look at your needs, to look at your wants, as well as have an emergency fund. So if I just go 3 seconds back, when I'm talking about your needs, I'm talking about things that have to be paid. As I said, things that have to be paid from my budget are not necessarily the same as things that have to be paid from somebody else's budget. So your wants, we usually say those are things that you can do without but can't do without, because we see how quickly people's wants move into needs, but then always have a budget for that as well. We human at the end of the day, so there are ones that make us happy that we need to spend money on in order to continue being the successful people we're becoming, And then the notion of emergency fund, ladies and gentlemen, I'm told when I study the text, I'm told this is probably the founding principle of financial planning, but over the years, and I guess due to the lack of adverse events that made people set up emergency funds. It's a concept that first we forgot very fast, so it came back during the first hard lockdown. There was so much uncertainty. The people that I think were at ease were those people that knew that they had at least some money for a few months to live, so the golden rule of thumb is that at least put in there, as I said, your budget, so at least put in there 6 times worth your living expenses, should suffice, and then when we're talking about planning for retirement, ladies and gents, I'd urge you to consider the following, the longer life expectancy. Every radio station, every conversation that I had that speaks about life expectancy, there's a common theme that goes from there, that we are living longer. I was even looking at people making marathon histories, there's an 82-year-old that ran a marathon, started at 72. So life doesn't end at retirement. It carries on, and then how much do you need, or how much would you need in retirement, again, it's dependent on your needs, one's wishes as well, and then, but we usually say to you, target replacing a final ratio of your salary, So if I put this in context, if let's say you earn, for ease of reference, 100,000 or 100% of that money, 75% is usually the accepted final ratio that we look at. Some people drop it down to 60. The reason for that is that there's no need for you to buy lunch, for you to commute, for you to spend money on things that are work specific, because in retirement it is said, or it is expected, that you won't be, yes, you'll be traveling, but you won't have expenses linked to your work, so expenses do go down, a bit there. So do you really need a lump sum? I ask this because some people take the lump sum based on the fact that it is allowed, or it is a regulation by law to say you can take a lump sum. But there's the other side. You don't need to take that lump sum. If you don't have any major debts to pay and you are happy with where your money is invested, from a behavioral finance point of view, it is better to receive that money monthly, because as you can imagine, the more money we have, the more opportunities we get, and then strict budgeting in retirement, very important. And then those that are invested in equities, just make sure your portfolio is beating inflation. I understand that, you're at a stage where you can take major risk, so yes, a smooth portfolio is key, but make sure you're at least beating inflation. Okay, so I think this is the most important part of my presentation. Not that what I just shared with you is less important, but for me, it drives home the point I want to share with you. So let's go on a journey. Let's explore the decision patterns and the consequences of two dentists. So here's a late night financial story called The Tale of Two Dentists. This tale of two dentists, we follow them through their life stages, when they start working, all the way to when we retire. We want to evaluate how seemingly small financial decisions can have a big impact on them in achieving their objectives. And some of you will relate with what you will see here. And then I'd want to ask you, or think about it, to say what's their goal, what's your goal, when you retire. So, and the answer is to maintain your standard of living. That's very important. Just aim for that, to maintain your standard of living. Okay, so my two dentists, ladies and gents, meet Tabo and Meredith. They studied together and started working at the age of 25 as interns, and then or as comserves rather, and then some of the assumptions that we have here is that they wish to retire at the age of 65, and then our inflation is 6%. our pre-retirement return on a balanced portfolio is 10%. I know it sounds Greek, but what we're trying to say there is that the funds or the places they'll be invested in, the investment vehicles they'll be in before they retire, is assumed that it will return 10% to them, And then return on cash investments, 6%. That's your money markets, cash accounts. That's actually where one of the best places to put your emergency funding that I alluded to earlier, because you don't need it to have too much volatility when you need it, You need to know it's there. And then the pre-retirement debit order escalation rate is assumed at 6%. And then by then, I mean, before they retire, every year they will pay an amount that increases by 6%. And then the post-retirement return on a balanced portfolio is 9%. As I said just now, when you are in retirement, you don't want to be taking a high-risk portfolio or too many risks, And then both earn an income of 600,000 per annum at the age of 35, So let's evaluate the 7 key decisions that are common in our circle. Some of us have taken these decisions as well, and see the effect, So decision 1, at the age of 25, Thabo starts saving 250 now at the age of 25, and then Meredith decides to start saving 250 at the age of 30, and then spends this money on a boyfriend, I just wish that your videos were on and see the guilty faces there. And then we say that the cost of error, I refer to it as the cost of love, that decision cost just over $1 million, 1,091,089 to be exact. Okay, and then the second decision that they both take regarding protecting their earning potential. And then, so as most of you would know, there's something called sickness and disability cover. So Thabo decides to buy that instantly. He believes that just as we are required to have insurance before we drive off in our new cars from the dealership, the same principle should apply to our personal lives, Before you even start thinking about anything, I think you need to protect your earning potential, Stories are plenty about what could go wrong, And then Meredith decides, no, I'm not buying any cover, and then I'm spending this money on going out, And then the cost of this error is that if Meredith becomes permanently incapacitated at the age of 45, in total monetary terms, for her to be earning 600,000 up until she retires, she would need a lump sum of 39,526,435 rands, So I'd round it off to about 40 million, So, but if there was some sickness and disability cover, this cost would have been taken care of. And then the third decision that we're going to spotlight on, it's Thabo decides, no, I'm retiring from this job, and then I'm gonna preserve my savings of 250, And then Meredith does like most people do. Funny enough, decides, nah, I'm cashing out my money. You only live once. I'm buying the car, I want that car, So the cost of that error, if the 250 was invested up to retirement, it would have yielded just above 8 million, 8,159,663 to be exact, And then the fourth decision, looks like Thabo is making all the right moves, And then the fourth decision, Thabo decides, no, at the age of 30, I'm buying life cover because it is cheaper when you are younger, because the risk factors associated with you are not so hectic, So, and then Meredith decides, no, I'll buy life cover later on in my life. I'm going to buy life cover at 45, this is after losing a parent, because most of us, it happens to us that it takes that adverse event to remind us of the importance of some of these things, So the the difference in premiums of 1 million life cover taken at the age of 30 and equivalent at the age of 45 until retirement, it's a total cost of 141,365, So that's the cost of error, or rather, the cost of error of not taking it earlier. Okay. And then we're gonna go to our fifth decision. Okay. So Tabo, he's been taking notes from his financial planner that taught him that fees are negotiable. So you don't have to pay the fees at the maximum, so you can always negotiate fees with a financial house, if I may put it like that, So at PPS, when we do open up these investment vehicles for you, fees are negotiable, obviously depending on the work that needs to be done, So always remember that when you are setting up these plans or these retirement annuities and so forth, negotiate your fees. I'm not saying it will be free, but I'm saying that you won't have to spend, or rather you won't have to pay the maximum fees for it. Okay, and then Meredith doesn't negotiate and pays a fee of 4% because that was what was written on the application form, without knowing that it could be negotiated, So cost of error, the difference between a 2% and a 4% fee can amount at retirement to an amount of 3,837,252,000. So that's how much a difference 2% makes. Sometimes you think, it's just a little percentage, but it does accumulate, and the cumulative total of those fees over years, it could buy you one of the ones that you listed when we did that exercise earlier. And then the sixth decision. So Tabo invests 1 million that he got as an inheritance, So he invested in a balanced portfolio, and then Meredith invests 1 million in a money market account. So perhaps she's risk averse, and then perhaps Tabo knows that over time, even if markets do go up and down, but over time, it does smooth out, So with a horizon from now, if you are young, up until retirement, it makes sense. It makes sense to go into a high equity portfolio instead of playing it safe and keep your money at the bank. It has been proven. There's even data from the local stock exchange to international stock exchanges that show you that over time, over a period of 10, 15 years, the market crashes that we see on the news and so forth do recover. So your best bet, if you have time, and if we're talking about retirement planning, we're talking about the long haul, So always remember that your cautious funds, yes, they are good. They do give us the assurance that there isn't much volatility in them, but you're probably shooting yourself in the foot over time if you've got 15 years plus, or 10 years plus. As I explained, the balanced portfolio does go up and down, but at the end, it all works out. It's there. If you just Google equity returns over 100 years, you'll see the ups and downs that I'm speaking of. But over time, it does work out. Okay, and then the cost of this era, the cost of being conservative, will cost you 4 million, or rather, it cost me 4 million, around 4 million. So it's 4,017,869. And then in terms of the decisions, we look at the cumulative cost of these errors as we identify them. And then you'll see that for spending money that was meant for other things on other purposes has a cost to it, For those that will have an opportunity to take out money from their pension fund, the wisest choice is to preserve it, because if you chow it, there's a cost attached to that, We call it the opportunity cost. And then, so if you look at the total cumulative cost of errors, you can see that sometimes we think, YOLO, we live once, I can get away with it, I'll work harder. But some of the costs or some of the errors you can't recover when it comes to monetary terms, because you don't have time, So always remember that. I wanted to stress that very, very, very important to remember that, that over time, there's a cost to these decisions that we make, opportunity cost. So before you make your next decision, look at both sides of the coin. I'm not saying you don't, but this time look at with a magnifying glass. Oh, and then the result is that at retirement, Thabo can draw out an income of 20,783,000 per month, at 8%, So in terms of the smart moves that he made and all the investment decisions that he made, he can buy himself a pension or herself a pension of 20,783 per month for a period of about 20 years, And then because for various reasons, Meredith decided not to be smart about her money or her decisions, then it cost her a shortfall of 7,000 per month. So instead of getting 20,000 per month from retirement, she can only get 13,000 from retirement. At retirement, 7,000 is a lot of money if you don't have any other sources of income or if you're not active enough to make your own money, so to say. And then in terms of decision 7, so let's say Thabo decides to work up until 70. He sees that between 65 and 70, it's not too long. I'm still a spring chicken. I can still do this. I've got many people that need my services. I've been in the industry long enough. So I come highly recommended. Decides, no, let me work for extra 5 years and retires at 70. So let's assume that Meredith had a choice to work up until 70, but decided to retire at 65 and brought down a 10% income, Let's see what happens. The effect is that from the 20,000 that I mentioned in the previous slide, Thabo could now draw out 25,461 per month. And then Meredith still stays at 13,000, So the takeaway is that on the top part of this is that sometimes you have to make the tough decisions, and this is to those that are near retirement, and for whatever reason there was not enough provisions for that retirement. That retirement age is not forced down on you; it's recommended. So you don't have, and this is from a retirement savings point of view, you don't have to cash them out at that age. So cash them out if you have a need. Cash out your retirement annuity if you have a need. But if based on the one-on-ones you're having with your financial planner or advisor or broker, you realize that I'm not ready to retire. Nothing in law stops you from pushing that retirement date a bit out. I know it's a toll. Sometimes it's not the life that we sort of imagined, but it's a fix that some of you can do. And then on the bottom part of that, we established that because of Thabo's decision to retire at 70, his or her capital can last for 37 years, So even if people live long, I think 107 is a long enough time, to be taken care of, So 25,000 per month for that long, it could pay some key expenses in that regard, And then the capital will last for 14 years. So at the age of 84, the capital will be depleted. So if she lives up to 107, there'll be a shortfall then, you know. So there'll have to be another plan made, you know. So the takeaway from this, if you can delay the retirement age due to the fact that you did not save enough, do it. Be wise with your spending, you know. We don't have much paid days left, whichever age you are. At the beginning of my presentation, I showed you that somebody of 25 has about 480 paid days left, you know. So you might think it's a lot of months or years that I'll be working, therefore I'll get money. It's not like that, you know. We are planning for retirement, and as I said, people live longer these days. So and then the message is that Thabo can draw double his income for 23 years longer just by making those key smart decisions. So what have we learned? What have we learned from the tale of our two dentists, you know? I know you know of the saying that time is money. Yes, time is really money. We're talking about the time value of money. A compound interest can work against you or work for you. You yourself, ladies and gentlemen, are your biggest asset. You know, don't focus on the short term. I'll say that again. Don't focus on the short term, and then life and death happens. You know, compounding interest can work against you, as I said. And then avoid reckless conservatism. You know, yes, you don't want to blow up all your money on a speculative investment. But however, being too cautious might also work against you. Putting money that's meant for the long term in, say, a conservative account that yields just bank-related interest might not be the best thing you can do for yourself, especially when you're planning for retirement. And then retirement is just a tax event, you know. It's not waiting for you. There's no people waiting for you there to say at 65, you must stop, you must cash in your retirement annuities. If you can, do that, you know, and if you can do it earlier, also do that. But if you're not in a position to retire at that age, remember what I said, you can push it out a bit, you know, you can be creative a bit. Yeah, and then, so now the next part, ladies and gentlemen, it's on the investment vehicles. So it's just a reminder, some of them you know. I'll just highlight the key aspects regarding them. And I hope you'll keep the lessons we learned from the tale of our two dentists. So in terms of investment vehicles, when we speak about retirement planning, we've got two. We've got what we call compulsory vehicles and what we call discretionary vehicles. So what falls under compulsory vehicles, we're talking about things like retirement annuities, pension funds, provident funds, preservation funds. Those are regulated according to the Pension Act according to the Pensions Act of South Africa. So we call them compulsory because most of them you can retire, you can withdraw and put in as you wish. You know, for example, on a retirement annuity, the fund rules, according to the trustees, will probably say you can retire at the age of 55 minimum or 50, but 55 is the most common one. You know? So if you want to retire at 40, you might not be able to access that money because it's regulated. Of course, if you immigrate, if you are ill or disabled, there are special rules for you to take that money. Pension funds are usually employer managed. So those ones, again, they are regulated. It's not money you can take in and out. So a pension funds remains compulsory in that sense. You know, it's similar to retirement annuity, but as I said, it's mostly administered or run by employers. And then we've got provident funds. So provident funds also, I call them hybrid retirement funds because they've got all sorts of features in them. but they are similar in nature to retirement annuities and pension funds, also provided for by the employer. And then preservation funds, this is a vehicle, this is a vehicle that we use to preserve our retirement funding in the event that you change jobs. You don't have to withdraw and pay SARS all that money, you can just preserve it. If you're not sure about what to do, preserve it, so it allows you one withdrawal after you preserve it. So even if you don't take the withdrawal at this point, you still have another chance, another strike to withdraw from your preservation fund. And then on the discretionary vehicles, we've got endowments, we've got unit trusts, we've got tax-free investments, we've got cash. I'm aware that our list is not an exhaustive list, but for the sake of this presentation, these are the discretionary funds that you can get from the PPS platform. Cool. And then when you are in post-retirement, now the time that the tax event that we've worked for all our lives is here. So now we retire. So you've got two options when you do that. One, you can purchase a living annuity. So the living annuity, or you can do a conventional annuity. So the living annuity is equities based. It's got rules to say that you can withdraw from 2.5% to about 17.5% of your capital. And then you can't do more than that unless special circumstances, but as a general rule, you can withdraw more than that. The capital is reinvested in investment portfolios. That can do wonders for you because your money is still growing, even if you are at retirement. And then when you die, the fund value can be paid to your beneficiaries, either as an annuity or lump sum, which is taxed. So that's the key features of a living annuity. And then in terms of a conventional annuity, it pays a monthly pension paid until your death. Annuities can be paid at a set amount throughout or increase with inflation up to 15%. The higher the annual increase each year, the lower the initial annuity payment. It can be guaranteed. And in terms of conventional annuities, a single life, that's if you're doing it alone as like the retiree, you're not involving anybody, or you can do it as a joint life annuity if it's for you and your spouse, or you can do it as a capital preservation annuity. I know the question that some of you might have is that which one is better? I'm going to give you that classic financial advisor response. It depends. It depends on your circumstances, ladies and gentlemen. So it's not a one size fits all type of thing. But then there are business cases for both, and it all depends on your circumstances. Okay. And then factors affecting your choice of post-retirement annuity. Obviously, your marital status. If you're married, you could get a joint life compulsory annuity. So it sort of works well because both will have those annuities in retirement. And then if you're not married and perhaps you just want a single life annuity, that's also fine. So your marital status will determine which post-retirement annuity your advisor, broker recommends for you. Okay? And then you and your spouse's ages are very important. So if you're taking if you retire at 55 and then you only have 1 million and you wanna put it in a living annuity, a conventional living annuity, then there might be problems there because that 17.5% can only go on for so many years, So the age is very important. The age at which you purchase these annuities is very, very important. I'll stress again. And then your dependents, their ages and circumstances, So if you still have young children, but I guess that's not the classic example anymore. There are examples where we do find members or clients that have financial dependence depending on them, even if they are adults, So there are cases like that. So it's something to think about, you know. So as I said, it depends which one works for you, looking at all these circumstances. And then the other one that I have for you is that it is the need to leave money in your estate when you die, you know. So I'm not sure if we know, but for those that we don't know, in terms of section, so in terms of the Estate Duty Act, retirement funds, as in retirement annuity, when somebody does pass away, it's not included in any estate, you know, as estate. So it gets dealt with via Section 37C of the Pension Funds Act, you know, whereby the trustees will decide who gets the money. But then when we're talking about post-retirement annuities, sometimes in that stage, maybe the client or yourself, you don't have money to pay for life cover, or whatever reasons. There might be certain reasons why you don't have that cover in place, you know. So things like that will determine in terms of which one you take, if you need to leave some money in your estate or if you don't, you know. So that will determine. And then your health plays a very important role. Remember, on a single life annuity, you buy that annuity, some of them, it's if that life passes on, then there's no annuity left, you know. So if your health is not so good, and your spouse's health is not so good, perhaps you should look at a living annuity, because there you've got control of the funds. You can pick beneficiaries, you know. And then obviously you and your spouse's perceived life expectancy. So that's very important. As I said with my 1 million rand example, if that's all you have, and you've got a long life expectancy, that will also influence the type of annuity we can buy with your money. So very important as well. And then your financial position at retirement, you know. So that's also important. Obviously, if you've got more than enough saved up, you can have a hybrid, you know, nothing is stopping you from there. So these are the factors that we look at, you know. So ladies and gentlemen, I have come to a point where I'll land this plane. But before I do that, we've got an opportunity. I was informed by our BD team, our business development team, that we've got a lucky draw for somebody to win an investment voucher of 2,500 rands, you know. Maybe it is the seed that will plant towards retirement, you know. So Kapish will tell you about the link, and then on that link we'll choose a winner as well. So I thank you so much for your attention, especially on a Tuesday evening. You guys have been a great audience. I thank you. Kapish, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks for the very informative presentation. Patrick, before I run into the Q&A from the attendees, what I'd like to do maybe is just to sum up some of the key points from my side that I think came through quite strongly. I think, you know, first and foremost, the facts are quite scary regarding, you know, only 5% being able to actually retire, 1% of the population being able to retire comfortably. And this is when we look at actual employed individuals earning an income. So I think from my side, that's a point that we really need to consider. Those of us that have the luxury of time, I think it's very important to utilize that to our advantage. And very important for me is that, once again, you know, it's not a once-off event in terms of your financial planning, and that there's a lot required in terms of, you know, doing things on an ongoing basis to make sure you're on track. What I'm going to do is run into some of the questions, and I've kind of themed them. And yeah, let me start. Patrick, are you still fine? Can you hear me?
Yes, Kapish, I was just getting a water break. I can hear you. I'm fine.
Okay, great. So, Patrick, the first question we have, which is anonymous, really ties into, I guess, the regulations of various vehicles and specifically pension funds. So we know, as an example, that in Greece, not too long ago, they imposed austerity measures that were really based on the principle of the government not being able to service their debt or their international debt. So the question really comes down to how much at risk are we as South African citizens in terms of getting to a situation where our pension funds are at risk based on the government's ability to pay foreign debt. And I guess it's also the note, how sure are we? Really, for me, it's a matter of just stating the facts in terms of what the regulation is.
Sure. Thank you for that, Kapish. Really interesting question. It keeps most of us awake at night, So the way I see it, and I don't like to guess what the person's next or the government's next move is, So I'll take it from the regulation. So as you know, or for those that do not know, in terms of retirement funding in South Africa, it is regulated by Regulation 28 of the Pension Funds Act, which prescribes in terms of where to invest our money, So it's not, fortunately, it gives a diverse pool of vehicles or other funds that we can invest into. We don't just have to invest in local equities or in local infrastructure. You are allowed to structure it such that you are invested offshore, So for those that have, but you can invest all of it offshore, of course, but there are limits that are imposed to there to say it doesn't have to be all local. So, but if you look on, and the news are nothing to go by, but there's nothing solid that suggests that that's the move they're taking. It's just people's fears. If you look at the review papers, if you look at the consultations, that proposal lets it shelf for now. So fortunately, we live in an environment where we do have strong institutions, strong regulations that sort of guide us from there. But for how long, I don't know. I don't know. But so far, Regulation 28 guards us against that. I hope that was satisfactory.
Thanks, Patrick. So I guess, the theme is also, that comes up a lot regarding retirement saving is really regarding, diversification, ensuring that you check in on a regular basis. So the next question, perhaps in line with that, and we mentioned that compound interest works both ways, or interest can be your friend or your enemy. The next question really talks about, things like deflation. So how will local deflation, stagflation, and if we get to a point of hyperinflation, how would that, influence an individual's retirement savings?
Okay, so obviously we don't want to be in any of those, but I guess what I was talking about earlier comes into play again here. So you spoke of diversification. So there's, wherever you are, even the mighty the mighty first worlds, if I may call them that, there is still a currency risks involved in investing in there, So I personally don't think it's wise to say, look, I'm going to put all my money in the dollar, in the yen, or in the pound, So the only thing that has proved over time and time again to beat that is just the concept of diversification. And fortunately, Regulation 28 does allow us to create mean portfolios, or rather strong portfolios that are hinged on many economies around the world. So it's not just worried about Southern Africa or the JSE. At least you've got some pound exposure, you've got some US dollar exposure, some yen exposure. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
Okay, and then I think coming back to sort of the element of ongoing planning, and really the fact that people's lifestyles, their requirements change on an ongoing basis. A question that has come up is, if you're 37 years old and wanting to save for retirement, is there like a percentage of your salary that you should be putting away? How would you approach a question like that?
Okay, so my classic answer, Kapish and everybody else on the call, it depends, So again, it depends on what your needs and wants are, So if for example, you wanted, like, I don't know how you want your retirement to look like, but I can answer it from a fiscal point of view, So the government from time to time, which this incentive is one that I witnessed in my time, where they say you can invest up to 27.5% of your gross earnings or remuneration, whichever one is higher, and then they'll allow that as a deduction. So I've realized from all the engagements and case studies we've seen, even that 27.5% in some instances, because you might be that 37-year-old that wants to be a philanthropist, so you need 20 million or 10 million to start your angel funding, Of course, the savings towards that will be higher. But if you're just worried to say, I just want to keep my level of so I just want to keep the same level of lifestyle that I'm living now, then it's a much more easy calculation. So as I said, let's say, and please note this is advice, this is not advice. So let's say we're targeting a 75% ratio to income, at the end. And so we'll have fancy systems, and we'll say, or a financial calculator or tools, and then we'll say, look, you're earning 100%, which is X. For you to get to 75% of that X amount, you need to save this much. So my best answer or to anonymous attendee will be to say, speak to your financial advisor to check your financial needs. Speak to us, even if it's on an obligation-free basis, just to say, hey, help me out. I want to retire with 100,000, but I'm not sure how much I need to save, 100,000 per month. I'm not sure how much I need to save. Could you help me with that? We've got all the tools, bells and whistles to help with that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Patrick. So something that's come up, I guess, in a similar sort of theme is, this question of, if I have 10 million Rand now, what will it be worth in 30 years' time? And I think there as well, we must just be wary of not trying to quote numbers, because it isn't as easy as that. But I think the moral there is really, ensuring that on an annual basis, you keep checking your planning and factor in elements like inflation. Obviously, inflation is a reality. We know that money today will not be worth the same in 10 years or 20 or 30 years time. And it comes back to the diversification of your portfolio as well, but also understanding your goals and needs. Something that's come up under diversification once again is, wouldn't it be more prudent to just invest in gold, silver, and Bitcoin instead of investing with insurance companies specifically? And I guess this ties into the regulation and how certain compulsory vehicles are run, but, basically saying that, to avoid feeding brokers and overpaid CEOs. So yeah, maybe you can just shed some light in terms of how funds are run within insurance companies, and some insight once again to just this diversification question. Patrick, you're just on mute.
Okay, so about that. So for sure. So I like that plan. I keep every time we talk, every time we're discussing these concepts with clients and members, I don't think it's fair to assume that we're saying that retirement annuity should be your only vehicle for retirement. It helps with your cash flow. It's always nice to have a balanced portfolio of different asset classes. Gold and silver for many, many years in the past and many, many years to come. I think will always be something to fall back on. You know, it has shown us from market crash to market crash all the time. And it's just stable, you know. On Bitcoin, look, there's no denying the fact that the world is moving towards another trajectory, you know. But then I like the line of work that we are in, because we're in the line of work where we analyze numbers. Numbers don't lie, you know. So if you look at Bitcoin, it's probably one of the most volatile investment classes out there, you know, if I may put it out there. So the thing about retirement is that you will need to retire at a point in time. You know, you need to retire on that day. So we've seen on the news where a prominent CEO said they don't like Bitcoin, for example, because it pollutes a lot. You saw what happened to the value of Bitcoin over those few years. Yes, granted, it went back. But if for that period, that was your retirement period, and all your money was in Bitcoin, what then? You know? And the tax incentives that you get on your retirement funding vis-a-vis what you'll pay for all the other classes of investments. Also, it's something for you to look at, you know. So if you've got a risk appetite, like most people I know, or some people I know, and you don't mind the volatility, by all means, use that as another form of investment, you know, but it can be your only one, you know. And then feed hungry brokers, in terms of that, I like to go back to the tale of the two dentists. Fees are negotiable, you know. So there are some brokers, many of my colleagues will tell you that, look, I haven't built anything for you. I can't charge you 4% initial, you know. Let's take a lower fee and then I make money when you make money, you know. So there's fee structures like that, you know. And then overpaid CEOs, I guess I won't be objective on that one, but I could just say, looking at the past year or two and looking at the types of terrain that these guys had to sort of weather us or steer us through, you know, they deserve all the big money they're being paid, you know, because they're doing a job that it's not any company that can do that, you know. So it's special types of talent that deserve special type of remuneration, you know. But the fees need to be fair. It can't be because I like you, I'll give you money. You can negotiate the fees. Yeah.
Thanks, Patrick. So just before we wrap up, perhaps just something along the lines of, you know, this thing of either living too long or dying too soon, and factoring that into your retirement planning. So one of the comments is, you know, most dentists won't be able to rely on or survive on 20,000 Rand plus per month, you know. What if one continues working indefinitely and continues saving, you know, health permitting? And I think perhaps the easy answer there for me would be it comes down to, you know, the lifestyle that you want to live. You know, we talk about retirement being a tax event, and there, once again, it doesn't have to be sort of a specific age or a specific date. So perhaps maybe just share some thoughts with us on that.
Okay, so Kapish, so as you're talking, I also was just looking at the chats. So also to wrap up, so the first thing is that there isn't anything in law, I'll say it again, that says you need to retire at a certain age, you know. So you can retire even 15 years after your set retirement date. I know I'm pushing it, but there's nothing in law that says you have to stop at that time. There are no penalties. It's an election that you make, you know. And the only question, though, is that pre-retirement, before you get to retirement, I'm not going to say all advisors, but most astute advisors, brokers, should put you on a sort of aggressive profile, you know. But once you reach retirement, that profile should not be where you are at retirement, you know. So hence it speaks about the need that you highlighted of checking in every year, you know. Check in every year and then just make sure the fund selection the fund selection is proper for your circumstances, And then I looked at something else that you did not ask. We'll call it a bonus answer. So I know quite a lot of professionals that have saved more than enough at retirement, So there could be possible outcomes or reasons as to why they did that. But I think proper financial planning is one of those, I know people that passed on and they were on a living annuity. It was so much that they left it as generational wealth for the descendants, So there are stories or real case studies that I know where retirement funding was all it took to set them apart, So yeah, that's my 2 cents. I hope I answered your question.
Thanks for that. So maybe the final theme before we wrap up, and you've kind of touched on it already, is really, this thing of retirement planning being a minefield. It seems like it's so unachievable, and I think especially if in South Africa we do have this thing that we call the sandwich generation, perhaps, where you're in a position where you're taking care of dependents on both ends. Our parents perhaps have not had the wealth. We've not inherited wealth. And also, the comment around, planning for retirement or retirement savings is like chasing your own tail. I know we've touched on this thing regarding planning, regarding understanding your lifestyle and all of that, but perhaps just before we wrap up the session, what would you say to those comments?
Okay, so so the first one, I would go to a study. It was a peer study done in the States that quantified the importance of a financial a professional in your quest towards that journey of financial independence or freedom. It was found that those that DIY'd made bad decisions. Because we're not rational. Human beings are not rational. You'll be surprised at the decisions you make. So that's key. I would partner with a financial professional from a reputable company. So that's the first thing I would suggest. And then again, the reason why we focused on that slide of compulsory savings and discretionary savings was just perhaps it was not well articulated, but it was just to show that retirement is just a tax event, and you don't have to save in a retirement annuity. One of the best gifts the government of the day, I know it doesn't make sense in that statement, but the government of the day has given us is the tax-free investment account. So saving in that, you're not restricted to saving locally. You can take it offshore. You don't pay tax on it. You don't pay tax on the growth. You can keep it till you retire. It can supplement your retirement funding. And then in terms of retirement planning being something like chasing your own tail, if it's not done properly, and unfortunately, as I said, we see it every time. You'll come with a proposal to say, Mr. 37-year-old or Dr. 37-year-old, you said you wanted, I note that 20,000 is small, but you said you wanted 50,000 in retirement. And then you say, here's your plan. Let's work on this plan. If you don't want to take risk, we'll put more money to compensate for the lost opportunity cost. But if you're willing to take risk and look at the data from all these analytics to show you that over 10 years, market's correct, we can work on something reasonable, so, and check in on it, but most people will say, what's the minimum? So if you put a minimum of 500 rands for a goal of 50 million rands, it is going to feel like chasing your own tail.
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. I think, that sums it up quite nicely. It's really a twofold sort of discussion. I think first, as an individual, you've got to be reasonable in terms of your expectations. You've got
Yeah,
to know what you want, and you've also got to be disciplined and follow through on the
yeah.
planning. So on that note, Patrick, I think we've covered everything. I'd like to thank you once again for the very informative presentation. I've certainly enjoyed it and learned a lot. And once again, now that we've covered the questions, I'd like to hand over to the SADA team to officially conclude the session for this evening.
Thank you, Kapish.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to close the session now. Have a good